Yeah, and I think with higher education, it does have its own unique attributes, doesn't it, that other organisations don't have. They're very complex organisations, so I suppose we need to cover that as well.
And that's where it's even more important that for higher education projects that they get it right first time.
Yeah.
They can't, getting the amount, obviously trying to complete all the work on the tight budgets is one challenge, but the risk of it not going well, and that happens, and that can double your budgets.
Absolutely,
It literally can.
Yeah.
You assume a university is one entity, but actually a lot of universities are made up of colleges, lots of different institutions, and they all tend to have their own systems. So it's almost getting to the levels with higher education that, similar levels to sort of shared service, projects, because you're trying to bring all these different sources, harmonized into one solution.
Getting everyone on board to actually say, yes, we are going to make that decision and go and change and upgrade to a new system. I mean, that in itself is a challenge, getting everyone on board and everyone agreed, because you've got so many different stakeholders.
There will be senior members, senior program leaderships, finance directors, HR directors within these organisations that are extremely nervous about pushing the button.
Hi there, welcome to the Binary 10 podcast. My name's James Blake, I'm the CEO of Binary 10.
And my name's Steve Smales, and I am the Chief Operating Officer. Welcome to the series of podcasts where we like to talk about all things data migration related.
And also we'll talk about the human side of running a business, so we hope you enjoy.
Here we are again.
Yes.
How exciting. No, really looking forward to this. Lots more to talk about.
It's going to be great, isn't it?
It is, and it's data migration, which we love. But what's the topic today? What's the focus area that we're gonna be doing?
Well, we're actually going to start doing a series on data migration around the higher education sector. So this is the first one, and we're going to do, what is the key challenges? What are the key challenges of data migration around higher education?
Yeah, and I think this is so important. So before we get into it, we've been supporting higher education organisations for over 5 years now, I think. It's one of the, It wasn't the first sector that we were involved in with data migration, but it's one that's sort of close to both of our hearts now, and we're quite passionate about. And we've also learned a hell of a lot about it in these last 5 years, having delivered for a couple of HE universities, both really exciting projects, lots of challenges and lots of learnings about different impacts and challenges for data migration that we hadn't picked up on in the other sectors we've done. So no, it's going to be a good topic, it's going to be a good series, and more importantly, let's hope we can really promote some benefit to those higher education institutions, and maybe learn a few more things about it as we go through it. But yeah, super excited.
Yeah, and I think with higher education, it does have its own unique sort of attributes, doesn't it, that other organisations don't have. They're very complex organisations, so I suppose we need to cover that as well. But let's start off with what we think are the key challenges. So, what do you think's number one? Is it funding, money?
It tends to be in all sectors, let's be honest. Yeah. But I think it's really important we talk about this, because I think, as most people see, I've seen, in the news and everything about how, these institutes, their funding's being reduced.
It's international student reductions.
Exactly.
Like
There's lots of challenges. I'm sure there is for lots of sectors, but specifically here. So it's incredibly important. The reality is they don't have big budgets. And also that. A lot of these types of projects involving data migration, we always see it, don't we? We've done a podcast on data migration disasters. Yeah. And that's where it's even more important that for higher education projects that they get it right first time. Yeah. They can't, getting the amount, obviously trying to complete all the work on the tight budgets is one challenge. But the risk of it not going well, and that happens, and that can double your budgets.
Absolutely,
it literally can.
Yeah. So when budgets are tight, it is important to get things, organised properly up front, isn't it?
It is. And I think, and so, we've already looked at lots of ways that we can help with the challenge of funding. Specifically, we like to talk about data cleansing. It's one of our sort of key areas, isn't it? But actually, almost go a little bit against what we promote, in that it's so important that, that they understand that you don't have to have all your data perfect. Yeah. There are certain data items that need to be perfect and need to be right in order for the business to operate. But doing data cleansing properly and having a proper, prioritization around all the known issues and the qualities with your data will really help, ensure that, you're not wasting time or wasting effort on cleaning data that actually won't impact your service or won't stop you from going live on a new solution. I think that's one of the areas that we'll discuss, but I think that's That's the key one for me. That's the area that you can really ensure that you don't, just waste lots of effort and energy on correcting data that you think is important when actually you can do it later on. Or
and that's something that we do is that prioritization or the identification of not just known data issues, but finding the unknown ones that we can only sort of start to figure out once we start looking at the data. But because we know what we're looking for, we can identify those quickly, prioritize, and then we can say, okay, you have to do these ones, you don't have to do these. And we can also, as part of the data transformation, we can maybe put in default values. That means you don't have to start putting together enrichment spreadsheets or amending loads and loads of data in your legacy system. So it's we can target the data requirements that are needed, and the lower priority ones we can say, well, leave it till later, or we'll handle that as part of the transformation.
Absolutely. And I think, and the other key one on funding, and it links back to another podcast we've done, where we talk about planning and things like that. But it's so critical, isn't it, that early on in their program discovery even and kickoff that you think about data, and that you bring those data experts in. Now, that doesn't mean that you spend a fortune and bring in a big team and just assume they'll crack on. No, you bring in a couple of individuals like ourselves. But people that have the experience, that understand how to do it properly and can actually kick off activity. So when we think about cleansing, you can get the business teams on clearing down purchase orders, lots of activity that, they probably known about but have never had the time to do. Well, let's really push it and get them to get ahead, because it's going to aid the program. And I think, that will also enable you to then plan efficiently, make sure you can understand where the pain points are and cost it properly, right? So I think that's really important, because then you can understand the budgets for data and what's required, and put the right plan, the right resources against it, because then that gives you the best chance of not having a disaster and, timelines being delayed and costs going up. So really key.
Exactly, because you need to at least identify the data issues early, because you don't want to start doing your cleansing in the last few weeks before cuts over, because then you're asking for trouble.
Absolutely. And it's a shame, isn't it? We come in halfway through sometimes. In fact, one of the higher education institutions we've delivered for recently, we came in halfway through. And so, it's very difficult to manage at that stage, which we were able to do, which was fantastic. And we were really pleased with that. But, really key. So you're absolutely right. I think funding we have to have that as the top one, don't we? It's so important that, you can't do these things on a whim. These are hard projects, and data is difficult. And I think there's probably another topic we can talk about why, data is difficult in higher education. But I think funding, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I would definitely go for that as top priority. I mean, what other ones do you think?
So I suppose, the next challenge that I was thinking of was the legacy systems and the complexity of those. You've got lots of very, very old, at some points, systems could be 20 years old. University is very different to maybe sort of, big PLCs or things like that who are doing upgrading every 5 or 6 years, something like that. But universities could have 20-year-old systems. They could have a lot that's been written in-house, a lot that's been customized, a lot of disparate systems over different departments. So I suppose, that's got to be a key challenge.
Yeah, and I can actually add an extra dimension to that, because you're absolutely right. And one of the things that, I just didn't even pick up on when we first engaged in one of our HE projects is that you assume a university is one entity. But actually, a lot of universities are made up of colleges, lots of different institutions, and they all tend to have their own systems. So it's almost getting to the levels with higher education that, similar levels to sort of shared service, projects, because you're trying to bring all these different sources, harmonized into one solution. So, that is a huge challenge. And that's where data migration really is key, because you can imagine you've got, as you said, 20 different sources, bringing all this data in a controlled, structured way, to then produce an output that's singular, that everything marries up to. So data migration has to be led by the design. How is that new system going to run? If certain parts of the university do a certain process in one way versus another, it's so important that functionally that design is harmonized, and then we will have the guide. Then data can do its thing. So that's definitely an area where you're absolutely right. It's a huge challenge for data, that one. And that's where, having a good company, a good methodology, good tool set for data migration is key. But also it proves where you have to reach out to those other work streams. It's not just about data, it's about the right design, good control, change management, setting the expectations of how, whether it's professors, students, suppliers, whoever it might be within that university or higher education institute that's using the system, that they understand what's changing, So yeah, really good call out that one. We've definitely experienced that.
Yeah, and that's a good point you make there about sort of, the collegiate universities having different colleges and just universities in general are very complex organisations, because it's not, a lot of the migrations we do for sort of PLCs, that side of things, you get a finance department, you get an HR department, and that's really who you're dealing with. With the universities, you've got the different colleges, you've got the different professional departments like your HR and like finance department, but you've also got the faculties and the departments within those as well, and you've got students to consider as well. So it's very complex organisations, aren't they? So that's another challenge, is the complexity of university organisations.
Yeah, absolutely massive. So I think so. Definitely, they're the two primary ones. I'm sure there's a few others out there. I mean, to be honest, in the projects that we've done in HE to date, we've had definitely challenges that are an effect of that, and we've had sort of the classic ones as well. But what else? What else is there specific to?
I suppose the other
HE?
one, I was just thinking just another challenge in general, when you consider the funding and the legacy technology and the complexity of organisations, is trying to get everyone on board. Because of those three factors, getting everyone on board to actually say, yes, we are going to make that decision and go and change and upgrade to a new system. I mean, that in itself is a challenge, getting everyone on board and everyone agreed, because you've got so many different stakeholders. Yeah.
And I think that's where, we'll reiterate it again. We can't say it enough, so I'm happy to sort of replicate, and replicate myself. But that planning, just to your point there, there will be senior members, senior program leaderships, finance directors, HR directors within these organizations that are extremely nervous about pushing the button to, can we do this? And that's why, we implore you, spend a bit of that funding, because it will pay you back on 3-6 months of planning, just bringing in not the whole team, but just the key leads, the key members, to go through it, to understand the scope, to understand the challenge, and put a plan together that they can all sign up to. And at that point, you can push the button. But I see it so many times where the buttons are already pushed. It's just like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. And sometimes, let's face it, we see it quite a bit. It's more of a reaction, right? Because they've held on to their legacy system as long as they could do, because they don't want to spend money, and all of a sudden it's gone out of support. And classic, everyone's moving to the cloud and all the rest of it. So it's a key time at the minute for a lot of HE institutions, and they're all going to be faced with this, because you can only hold on to your legacy worlds for so long. But it's important that we move, and it's important that we progress to take advantages of all the new technology and solutions. And actually that will pay these the HE sector back, because it will really add, their data as an asset, and these new tools, these new technologies will enable them to do so much more, which will benefit their organisation. So
and I think part of the move to new systems is actually to improve people's working lives as well, to make their business processes smoother, and maybe get rid of some of the donkey work that people have to do now. So you're looking to try and improve people's working lives by moving to a new system. But obviously, a lot of people are reluctant to change, especially if they've got systems and processes that have been in place for 15, 20 years. There is that reluctance, isn't there? And part of what we try and do, we're not sort of moving the whole system, we're only moving the data, but we try and give people the confidence that, yes, your data is going to be moved across, and things will work in the new system. We will get the data right, and your new system will work as expected. So that's part of our job as well.
Absolutely. And maybe we can finish on just one thing that I've personally experienced. And it's a difficult one to argue, but I want to raise it, which is, one of the things we talk about is, when we work with clients, whatever sector, we want to embrace their culture. I think that's important. We have a culture, we have a level of professionalism and fun and all the things that we want to do as an organisation. But the reality is you need to sort of lean into the culture of the client so that you can deliver well with them. And one of the things I would say about HE projects that we've done is just, they're an academic organisation, society. We've all been there. We've all been at school. We've all been to university, and we've all had to write presentations and detailed, dissertations and all those fun things. But I see it in the projects. I see the level of detail and information and reporting that they demand, because they're used to it, right? Yeah. They're used to that level of information.
That's right.
And I think, and I absolutely, I love it too. I mean, I'm sure we'll have a podcast on documentation, which I'm sure no one will watch.
That'd be fun.
That'll be fun.
Really looking forward to that
but
one.
It is important. It is important. But actually, what I'm going to say here might be a bit against that, which is a lot of effort sometimes goes into doing that during a program. And I think getting the program reporting right, so not overkilling it, because I see so many people we're doing a program now, and I can see it within institutions where people are just spending hours and hours and hours and hours reporting up, pretty reports, things that look great, but actually they're not really, that's not really focusing on the delivery. And it's important that we report, absolutely, don't get me wrong, but I think that nailing that and getting the right level of reporting, and I think what I would say to HE, higher education sectors, is in order to aid your project delivery, don't completely change the way you operate, but just ease off a bit on maybe some of the level of governance. It's great. I mean, that is one of the positive things in HA. Their governance is good. They do things in an academic way, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
But I think they've just got to get the balance right. They can just ease off in certain areas to just free up key people within the program to deliver.
Yes.
And I think that should definitely be looked at. So I think that's another thing that I just wanted to raise and talk about. Some people might be raising a few eyebrows and saying, oh no, we must be doing detailed reporting, and yep, we must, but we have to do it efficiently, because if we over-egg it, if we do too much on that, and it's important, but that's not what actually gets the work done and puts the thing live.
And are you eating up your budget by doing too much?
Exactly.
It's getting that balance right, isn't it?
No, absolutely. Another podcast. Well, hopefully I think that was really good.
Yeah, it was
hopefully
good. Enjoyable.
That's been really beneficial to our colleagues in the HE sector.
Hope so.
And I'm sure there's more to come. But thanks, Steve. See you next time.
See you next time. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining our podcasts.
If you want to see more, please like and subscribe.